Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Journey Through Torah. This week we are in Parsha Shoftim. Shoftim is Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9. And we're going to learn today about some legal issues. We're going to learn about setting up a governmental system and why it was important and what was the proper way it was supposed to be established and done. What was the purpose of all of these things, right? Because Yahweh wants the people to establish correct and proper order. We saw that when he gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, and he established leaders, leaders over tens, fifties, hundreds, thousands, to help learn Torah, teach Torah, keep order, keep the people in unity so they can move together and move along. This isn't necessarily what's being talked about here. Here it's not talking about just a family or community, small community type of thing. We're talking about national structure, okay? National structure about these things. But before we get into the breakdown of this, first we have to look at why. Why was it even necessary? I mean, why can't we just let each person just do what they want to do? I mean, as long as they love God, everything's right? Not necessarily. When it comes to just letting everybody do what they want to do without any type of rule of law, it's not freedom. That's anarchy. There has to be some boundaries within freedom to make sure that we don't harm other people, to make sure that we're not hurting other people, to make sure that we're free, but we're not free to just bombard over our brother, okay? So there are things in line to protect us and remain a people set apart. Okay, and that's one of the big things we're looking at is you are a people that are set apart. And as such, we need to show how in our lives, even day by day, we reflect the presence of Yahweh. So before we actually get into the establishment of the leaders, we need to quickly look at why they were needed in the first place. And we know there are reminders throughout the word of what's important, and we need people to remind us of this. We need shepherds. We need people to keep the word in front of us and to help when we are running off away, just doing our own thing, not paying any attention to what else is around us, and then the wolves come on, right? So we do need these things in our life. And, the scripture says, and they all did what was right in their own eyes. Well, show me when it says that's a good thing. It doesn't say that was a positive thing. So what we learn is we need to not go running off after our own things. We need to do what Yahweh says. And so we do need each other to help in that process, because by ourselves, sometimes we just get a great idea and then it's not really so great an idea once we really start to examine it. And that's what we do need each other for. Okay, so this is all part of the helping process. To remember, we don't serve ourselves. We serve Yahweh. And because we serve Yahweh, we honor him. We need to learn his ways to even just daily life, even just the things that we do in daily life. Let's back up a minute before we get into this parsha, and let's look at Deuteronomy 4. Deuteronomy 4, verses 5 through 8 says, "See, just as Adonai my God had commanded me, I have taught you statutes and ordinances to do in the land that you are about to enter to possess. You must keep and do them, for it is your wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the people, who will hear all these statutes and say, 'Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people.' For what great nation is there that has God so near to them, as Adonai our God is whenever we call on him? What great nation is there that has statutes and ordinances that are righteous, like all of this Torah that I am setting before you today?" If we look at verse 6, it says, "You must keep and do them, for it is your wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the people." Understand this. When we look at this where it says you must keep and do them, for it is your wisdom and understanding, if we read this in Hebrew, which we're going to break it down here in just a second, if we look at this in the Hebrew, it says, "Ushmartem," that is to shamar, is to keep, to guard, and protect, okay? "Va'asetem" is to do, "Kihu," and then this word, "Chachma," okay? This word, "Chachma," the word that's in grammatically there is "Chachmatechem," but the word is "Chachma," which is wisdom, and then "Uvenetech," sorry guys, I messed that up. Uvenatechem, which is the word from bina. Bina is the word, which means to understand or to discern. And then we see le'enei ha'amim. Le'enei is in the eyes of ha'amim, of the people or of the nations. So Yahweh says that when you keep and do the things that he is telling you today, it is wisdom and understanding, and it will be seen as such in the eyes of all the people, in the eyes of the nations. Is people, and also like a nation can be translated as a nation, as in the collective people. Okay, so all the people together. So this is what we're looking at. When we do what Yahweh is telling us to do, it is wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the people, because God's wisdom is above our wisdom. His ways are higher than our ways. And that's what we need to look at. When we're following what he says, sometimes it's beyond what we really comprehend. But this is what Yahweh is telling us. It is his wisdom and his understanding. Not our own understanding, his understanding. We'll get to that word bina here in just a second. First, let's talk about wisdom for just a second. The word wisdom, chokhmah. When we walk in the ways of Yahweh, we are walking in his wisdom. We're not walking in our own wisdom. We're not walking in our own ways. When we do what he says, we're walking in his righteousness. We're walking in his word. That's his wisdom. Okay, we're not doing our own things, because sometimes we're doing what Yahweh is saying for us to do, and we don't really understand why sometimes. But we do what he says. It is his wisdom. And this, when the people look and they see what happens, what is done, and the results, and how that benefits everyone in the community, then they will say, they will glorify God. They will honor him by looking at what you have done. Okay, so this is wisdom. Hosea 14:10 says, "Who is wise? Let him discern these things. Who is intelligent? Let him know them. For the ways of Adonai are straight, and the just walk in them, but the wicked stumble in them." Romans 11:33 says, "Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments, and how incomprehensible his ways." In Hosea 14:10 that we just read, we see that something that is all through this parsha, and even at the very last end, how this parsha closes out as well. It says, if you have wisdom, then discern these things. Discern what? To walk in the ways of Yahweh. This is how we are learning to discern. This is how we are following his rules, his ways. And it says the way of Adonai is straight. That is straight, upright. So if we are doing what is right, we are walking the straight path. We are walking a way that is good to Yahweh. We're not searching for our own wisdom or the ways of the world's wisdom. We're searching for the wisdom of Yahweh. We need to walk in his ways. Of Yochanan, it was said that he would go before Yahweh and call to repentance and turn people to the wisdom of the righteous. In Luke 1, verses 16 and 17, it says, "Many of Bnei Israel will turn to Adonai their God, and he will go before him in the spirit and power of Eliyahu, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children," that's teshuvah, "and the disobedient ones to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready for Adonai a prepared people." What is the wisdom of the righteous? It's not our own wisdom, it's Yahweh's wisdom. Because the righteous are following the ways of Yahweh, learning his ways, learning his Torah, learning his heart, writing it on their heart, applying it to them, and following hard after Yahweh, pursuing him. Okay, so that's his righteousness. James puts it this way. James 3:13-18 says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? By his good conduct let him show his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy, selfish ambition in your heart, do not boast and lie against the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic." Verse 16, "For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and not hypocritical. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in shalom by those who make shalom." See, that's the wisdom we want, the wisdom from Yahweh. And then there's characteristics that go along with that. So we need to learn to walk in these things, right? So which brings us to the next point, understanding. The word for understanding, bina, also means to discern. Okay, vein is the word that's used there, and it means to discern something, like to make a distinction between something. And so to understand means a separation for clarification, if you will, it can be defined as that. So what we're looking at to understand something, we are looking to discern to understand. Discernment is important. How do we learn to discern? We do not discern by how something makes us feel. We learn to discern between what? Between good and evil. We learn to discern between righteousness, unrighteousness. We learn to discern between clean, unclean, and holy and common. We learn to discern by the word of Yahweh teaching us what is right, what is righteous, what is holy, what is pure, what is clean, all of these, okay? So some things we can relate to understanding is Proverbs 14, 6 and 7. It says, a scoffer seeks wisdom, yet finds none. But knowledge is easy to the discerning. It means understand or to discern. Walk away from a fool, for you will find no knowledge on his lips. 1 Timothy 4, 15 and 16 says practice, but it can also, that word that's used there in the Greek is related to this Hebrew word bina. So practice could also mean to meditate on or to understand and discern these things. Be absorbed in them so that your progress may be clear to all. Give attention to yourself and your teaching. Persevere in these things, for in doing so, you will save yourself and those who hear you. Why? Again, why is wisdom and understanding important? Because Yahweh says when we're doing what he says, it will be wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the people, in the eyes of the nations. This is important, guys. You don't live for you. You live for Yahweh. Okay, if we're in covenant with him, we don't live our own life. We live his life. We live as he desires. Our lives are not our own. If we've been redeemed, if we've been bought with a price, we don't live our own ways anymore. We live his ways. And when we do so, Yahweh says that the people, the nations, will be watching you. And when they watch you, we can either be sanctifying his name or not. Are we bringing glory to his name? Or are we bringing dishonor to his name? Are we bringing shame to his name? Are we doing things that line up with his character? And so in the eyes of the nations, sometimes people are watching you and they may not know anything about you other than isolated incidents that they may come across you. And unfortunately, people make judgments about other people by brief interactions, not really knowing a person, okay? We live in a world that just has 30-second sound bites of everything, and people form a judgment based on that. But that's not the way the scripture tells us to be. But regardless, in all of our things, in all of our ways, we need to strive to show the heart of Yahweh in all things. Okay? Why? So that when the nations will see Yahweh in you, they will glorify him and come to him. Ezekiel 39, 27 to 29 says, when I have brought them again from the people and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and I am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am Yahweh their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, but I have gathered them unto their own land, and have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, says the Lord Yahweh. Wow. So good stuff, right? Isaiah 51, verse 4 and 5 says, hearken unto me, my people, give ear unto me, O my nation, for a law shall proceed from me, and I will make my judgment to rest for a light of the people. My righteousness is near, my salvation is gone forth, and my arm shall judge the people. The isles shall wait upon me, and my arm shall they trust. Why? Again, so that the nations will come to Yahweh. Your life is to draw people to the kingdom of Yahweh and to his ways. Right? So Isaiah 42, verse 5 and 6. Thus says God Adonai, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it, and ruach to those who walk in it. I, Adonai, called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and give you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the nations. See that? You can't be a light to the nations if the nations don't see you. You can't be a light to the people in the towns and the communities and the cities, whatever, if you're never seen. You can't hide away and show the goodness of Yahweh to other people. Yeshua says you can't light a light. You can't light a candle and put it under a bed. You don't light something and then hide it away. You light something and you set it so it can be seen. And when it is seen, it also gives light to the area that's around it. So that's you. Give light to those around you. People can see the light of Yahweh in you and be drawn to him. Matthew 4:15, again, Yeshua speaking. He says, the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people sitting in darkness have seen a great light. And those sitting in the region and shadow of death, on them light has dawned. Quoting from Isaiah 9:1. Matthew 5:16 says, in the same way, let your light shine before men. Why? So they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Okay, so the people will see you and glorify Yahweh because they see Yahweh in you. Okay, so why do we do these things? To make sure we're on the same page, so to speak. Make sure we're at least in the same book, to make sure we have the same goals. Okay, now we may have differing opinions in many different things, but if we keep the same goals and keep the important things, we won't stray from what Yahweh says is his ways, right? So we need to have people to help bring us together in that. And that's where this parsha comes in with Shoftim. Shoftim is judges. Shoftim, judges and officers are to be set up, but we also see others in this parsha as well. But we're talking about, again, biblical leadership, but we're talking about biblical national leadership. Okay? So this is leadership that is given on a national level. So what is the national leadership of Bnei Israel? Well, we're looking at the Shofet, which is a judge, and a judicial system that is being set up. Okay, Shoftim v'shotrim, judges and officers, police. You know, so we have judges and officers to help enforce that which is keeping order. Okay, this is biblical. All right, and then we have the Levi'im. Levi is the religious leadership and the civil servants. That would include the priests, the Kohanim, because the Kohen are Levi'im. Okay, right? Aaron was a Levite, and so was Moshe. He was a Levite. And so the family of Levi had different responsibilities. Those within the Levi had different families within Levi had different responsibilities. Aaron and his sons were called to be Kohen. All right. So again, a Kohen was a Levite. So the Levites as the religious leadership and the civil servants in there as well. The Navi is a prophet. This is religious guidance and national direction. All right, because the Navi, you think of a prophet who's just going around and telling people their future. And we'll address that in a minute, okay? And then we have Melech. Melech is a king. This is political leadership. Now, the thing about when Yahweh says to set up a king, he was their king. Matter of fact, he is their king. Let me correct that. He is the king of Israel, but he says when you go into the land, you're going to say, you want to have a political system just like all the other nations around you, and you're going to want a king. So when this happens, when you reject me as your king and you're going to want an earthly king, there's some guidelines for you. Okay, it was not Yahweh's desire for them to have an earthly king because he was their king. We'll again address that here quickly in just a moment. First, we're going to take a look at Shofet, a judge. Look in Deuteronomy 16, 18 to 20, verse 18, where it says, judges and officers you are to appoint within all your gates that Adonai your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they are to judge the people with righteous judgment. So you want judgment. Okay, people are like, oh no, judgment's bad. No, judgment's only bad if you're on the wrong side of it. Okay, you want judgment. Here's an example. If you have a dispute with somebody and neither of you can come to any kind of resolution, you want judgment. You want some kind of resolution to the situation. Now, you just hope that you're on the favorable side of that. But again, that was for the judge to decide. He was to go to the Torah and to see what the Torah has to say about the situation and then make a judgment to come forth in that. Okay. Now, also, the judges were gatekeepers in the ancient world. They had cities had gates, and then they had the judges at the gates. And they would allow something into the city, what was allowed in, what was allowed out, what was still able to pass through. All of this was up to the judges. If there was a situation, they would come to the gate of the city and they would have this there. they would hold court, right? Like, this is what's going on. They would make judgments. Inscribed on the city gates was supposed to be the Shema. Remember in Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4-9, it says that you're to inscribe these things on your doors and on your gates. Why? It's a reminder that in all things you honor Yahweh, not just your own ways, you honor him in all of your ways. This is a place where judgment was decreed, as well as the markets. The markets were often done by the city gates because it's where the people were, to go in and have whatever they would need in the marketplace as well. All right. Now, Zechariah 8:16-17 says, these are the things you are to do. What are we to do? Speak the truth one to another. Administer judgment of truth and shalom in your gates. Do not let any of you devise evil in your hearts against your neighbor, and do not love false oaths, for I hate all these things. This is a declaration of Adonai. So again, we are to want judgment, but we want to be on the right side of it. Okay. Matter of fact, if you have someone oppressing you, you want judgment. All of this coming in. So it should be righteous judgment, though. It's not someone based on their own opinion or something that they want, or just something they desire at the time, or something for political gain, or something just to gain something from someone in general. It's to be judgment based on righteousness. And again, where do we learn what righteousness is? We only learn what righteousness is in the Torah. Okay, not our righteousness, not our wisdom, not our understanding. We want Yahweh's, right? Continuing on, Deuteronomy 16, we read verse 18, then verse 19 says, you are not to twist justice. You must not show partiality or take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and distorts the words of the righteous. That word bribe can also be translated as gift, just FYI. Verse 20, justice you must pursue, so that you may live and possess the land that Adonai your God is giving you. So justice was not to be followed and practiced just by the judges. It was to be practiced and followed by the people as well. Now, when you came to mete justice out between situations, this is where the judges had the authority to do so. You don't have the authority to do that with your brother. But we all want to know the boundaries of righteousness, the boundaries of justice, so that we know, one, we can walk in it, and two, so that when the judges make decrees and they do what they need to do, that we're holding them accountable, that what they're doing is proper and what they're doing is in order. Okay. So again, justice was not just to be followed and practiced by the judges, but all Israel. In Deuteronomy 16:20, it says, justice you must pursue. Why? So that you may live and possess the land that Adonai your God is giving you. The word for justice you pursue is zedek, tirdof. That means zedek is the same word twice, justice, but zedek is also to be righteous. So what we learn here is justice justly. In other words, do the right thing the right way. Tzedakah is also translated as charity. And so tzedek is righteousness. So righteousness and justice are the same word. And then tzedakah is charity. When we are giving to one another, we are doing that which is righteous to one another. Okay? Because again, we're learning to walk in Yahweh's righteousness. How do we do that? By doing the things that he said we should be doing. Okay? Genesis 18:18 says that Abraham will most certainly become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have made myself known to him, so that he will command his sons and his household after him to keep the way of Adonai. What does it mean to keep the way of Adonai? Let's keep going in verse 19. By doing righteousness and justice, so that Adonai may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him. In Micah 6:8-9, we read, he has told you, humanity, what is good and what Adonai is seeking from you. What is it that he wants from you? Only to practice justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. The voice of Adonai calls to the city. It is wisdom to fear your name. Pay attention to the rod and the one who appointed it. See that? Practice justice, love mercy, walk humbly. Okay? These are things that we are all to do. Now, what about the levy? Again, levy, this is religious leadership and the civil servants for Israel. They were to administer the service of the temple, administer the service of the offerings, all the things that were to take place within the walls of the temple. They were also the ones to teach Torah, to give instructions in regarding to the Torah. Okay, in Deuteronomy 17, verses 9 through 12. Again, well, we're talking about judgment here. Again, the Levi'im were also considered judges in some of these areas, because you had a tough case, you couldn't figure it out, you went to the judge. The judge is like, I don't know, what do the Levites have to say about it? Again, we're going back to counsel, to receive counsel from the Torah regarding what righteousness and justice is. Okay, so this is what we read in Deuteronomy 17, 9 through 12. And so then come to the Levitical Kohanim and the judge in charge at that time, and you will inquire, and they will tell you the sentence of judgment. And you are to act according to the sentence that they tell you from the place that Adonai chooses, and take care to do all that they instruct you. You are to act according to the instruction they teach you, and the judgment that they tell you. You must not turn aside from the sentence they tell you, to the right or to the left. The man who acts presumptuously by not listening to the Kohen, who stands to serve there before Adonai your God, or to the judge, that man must die. So you are to purge the evil from Israel. So again, the Levi'im were to help uphold the judges, because if there came an issue, what do? They went back to see what the Torah has to say. All right. So how do we know that the Levites were supposed to be teaching the Torah and teaching what Yahweh has said? Again, they were told so. Okay, here's one example. Vadaber Yahweh el Aaron, and Yahweh said to Aaron. There are not too many times that we read that Yahweh spoke directly to Aaron. Okay, normally he said to Moses to tell Aaron, but there's a couple times we see in the scripture where Yahweh spoke to Aaron. This is one example of them in Leviticus 10, verses 10 and 11. It says, you are to make a distinction between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean. And you are to teach Bnei Israel all the statutes which Adonai has spoken to them through Moshe. In Deuteronomy 33:10, we read of the Levi'im that they will teach Jacob your judgments and Israel your Torah. They will put incense in your nose and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Malachi 2, 5 through 7. It says, my covenant was with him of Levi. My covenant was with him for life and for shalom. I gave them to him for reverence. So he revered me, and he was awestruck by my name. Instruction of truth was in his mouth. Injustice was not found on his lips. In shalom and uprightness he walked with me, and he turned many from iniquity. For a Kohen's lips should safeguard knowledge, and Torah must be sought from his mouth. For he is the messenger of Adonai Savaot. Okay, so again, it was important that the Levites had to teach the Torah to the people and uphold the Torah, which comes down to prophet. Well, if that was what the Levites were to do, what was a prophet to do? The word prophet, Navi, is one who speaks by inspiration. It doesn't mean necessarily future telling. No, even though many of the prophets told what was going to happen to the future, told what was going to happen to Israel. This is what Yahweh was inspiring for the nation. He was to give his word. The job of the prophet was to speak what Yahweh was saying. Okay, so this most of the time affected them on a national level. All right, most of the prophets within Israel, they were Levi'im as well. Most of the prophets were Levites. And they would be around the temple and the tabernacle a lot because that's what they were supposed to be doing as Levites. So they would speak by inspiration of Yahweh because they spent a lot of time with him. Okay, this is a gift that Yahweh had given to them to speak his word and declare his word. So they mostly spoke to leaders and to Israel on a national or on a collective manner, although there were times that individuals would seek out a prophet of Yahweh. So the thing is, we have this false presumption that the prophets were fortune tellers and psychics. No. A matter of fact, Israel was warned to not go to people like this. A prophet was to speak by inspiration of Yahweh, to speak inspired by his breath, by his Ruach. And that wasn't necessarily like, hey, where should I put my 401k? What stock should I invest in? No. Okay? No. We're given some warnings about this. All right. One is in Deuteronomy 13. It says, if a false prophet rises among you, even though you see signs and wonders, he does miracles, he does things, but he tries to draw you away from the word that you've already had, then he's to be considered a false prophet. Okay. And you don't listen to him. Why was he there in the first place? Because Yahweh says he's allowing you to know whether you love him with all your heart and soul or not. In other words, do we love Yahweh for who he is, or do we just love him because we think we can get some stuff from him? Because we think that he can just give us what we want. Because he tells us what we want to hear. See? No, that's a false prophet. All right. Let's go in Deuteronomy 18 when it talks about this. Deuteronomy 18:9. It says, when you enter the land Adonai your God is giving you, you are not to learn to do the abominations of those nations. There must not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or a fortune teller, soothsayer, omen reader, or sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or a medium, a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to Adonai. And because of these abominations, Adonai your God is driving them out from before you. You are to be blameless before Adonai your God. The thing with that is, guys, a lot of the things that are in that list that we just read that says is an abomination to Yahweh are considered entertainment now. Even people who claim to be called out people of Yahweh will pursue these things as entertainment or just a spiritual people. Just because someone is spiritual doesn't mean that you should be around them. Just because someone is spiritual doesn't mean that you should be listening to them. Okay, we need to pay attention and discern. There's that discernment. We need to pay attention and discern what Yahweh is doing in our life and doing around us as well. Continuing on in Deuteronomy 18, verses 18, I will raise up a prophet like you from among their brothers, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them all that I command him. Now, whoever does not listen to my words that this prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call him to account. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet will die. See, just because someone says, oh, I'm a prophet, does not mean they're a prophet Yahweh has sent. Or if they claim to be a prophet of God, again, does not mean necessarily that they are. We need to discern what is going on. There will be people who will do many things in the name of God. It doesn't mean that Yahweh sent them. Okay? Again, we need to take things to the word. We need to discern what's being done and what's being said. Jeremiah gives us another example of this. Jeremiah 14:14. Adonai says to me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I did not send them, nor command them, nor did I speak to them. They are prophesying to you a lying vision, divination, futility, a delusion of their heart. Therefore, thus says Adonai about the prophets who prophesy in my name, though I did not send them, yet keep saying, sword and famine will never be in this land. By sword and famine will those prophets be consumed. Yahweh is saying that there's prophets who are speaking in his name, and thus says the Lord. And he didn't say. There's warning about these. Don't listen to them because they're set for destruction, but you do not want to be involved in that with them. Jeremiah 14:14. Actually, I just read that. Jeremiah 14, verses 14 and 15. Ezekiel 13, 7-9 says, Did you not see an empty vision and speak a false omen when you say, Adonai says, when I have not spoken? Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, because you have spoken falsely and prophesied lies. Therefore, behold, I am against you. It is a declaration of Adonai. My hand will be against the prophets who see false visions and utter lying divinations. They will not remain in the assembly of my people, nor will they be recorded in the register of the house of Israel, nor enter into the land of Israel. And you will know that I am Adonai. So a prophet was accountable to the Levites, was accountable to others, okay? Even to the king. He was accountable to these people. And knowing that he had needed to speak what Yahweh said and only what Yahweh said. If he was to do otherwise, he would be considered a false prophet. It's pretty tough, okay? Now, moving on. Melech is a king. And again, we kind of mentioned in this that Yahweh was their king. Yahweh is the king of Israel, and he was be rejected when the people says, no, we want a king like all the other nations around us. So there's some guidelines that were given in there for the king. It says, so when you do this, here's the kind of king yours to choose. And let's take a look at a couple things. Deuteronomy 17:14. So when you come into the land that Adonai your God is giving you, possess it and dwell in it, and you say, I will set a king over me like all the nations around me. You will indeed set over yourselves a king, whom Adonai your God chooses. One from among your brothers will be appointed as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Okay, so what we find here is that they couldn't submit themselves to someone who was not going to submit to Yahweh. Okay, there's some guidelines put on the king as well, like he is to write a copy of the Torah for himself and carry it with him wherever he goes. How do you do that? And read from it every day. Hello? How do you do that? You put it within you. You write it. You get it in your heart. You carry it with you wherever you go. Okay? Couple things. In this parsha, we see a personal and national responsibility of the individual. You personally are responsible to live your life to Yahweh for you and your family and for those immediately around you. But you as an individual also have a national responsibility to uphold the word of Yahweh. And this is again where we do truly need each other. We are to guard ourselves. We're to guard our lives and our hearts just as much as we guard the sanctity of a set-apart nation as a whole. Psalm 141 verses 3 and 4 says, set a guard, Adonai, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. Let not my heart turn to any evil thing, to practice deeds of wickedness with men that work iniquity, nor let me eat of their delicacies. Proverbs 21:23 says, whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul out of troubles. What does James say about guarding the tongue, right? Watch what you say, watch what you're doing. The idea behind this is that we need to take a good, honest look at ourselves and how we're living, our intent of our heart, the things that we do, the things that we say. We need to take a good look at ourselves and say, am I a reflection of the word living in me? Am I a reflection of Yahweh and his kingdom living here now? And if not, these are things that we need to repent from and change. 1 Corinthians 11:31 and 32 says, for if we were judging ourselves thoroughly, we wouldn't be coming under judgment. But when we are judged, we are being disciplined by the Lord, so that we might not be condemned along with the world. So what we learn is that we uphold righteousness as a nation when we all submit our personal lives to righteousness. In other words, when we all determine that we will do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh, not what's right in our own eyes. That's one of the commandments regarding tzitziot, right? In Numbers 15, where it says you are to wear the tassels and look at them so that when you see them, it is to remind you that you don't go whoring after your own desires, go running off into doing whatever your eyes see that you want to do, but you are to keep my word. So in other words, when we see them, it's to remind us that we are set apart people, that we are walking in the word of Yahweh. We submit ourselves to Yahweh. We're not submitting ourselves to the lust of the flesh to walk in the ways of the world. Romans 6 puts it this way. Romans 6:16-19 says, don't you know that if you present yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, then of the one whom you are obeying, you are slaves, whether of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to being made righteous. By God's grace, you, who were once slaves to sin, obeyed from your heart the pattern of teaching which you were exposed. And after you had been set free from sin, you became enslaved to righteousness. I'm using popular language because of your human nature is so weak. For just as you used to offer your various parts as slaves to impurity and lawlessness, which led to more lawlessness, so now offer your various parts as slaves to righteousness, which leads to being made holy and set apart for God. In other words, whatever you submit yourself to, that's what you serve. That's what's going to grow in your life. You may have heard you become what you behold. That which you continually set your heart and your gaze upon is what you're going to be made into, be made like, is what you're going to become like. That which you meditate on, what you're going to become like. So set ourselves to righteousness. Set ourselves to wisdom and understanding, set ourselves to the word of Yahweh, and we learn to do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh, not in the eyes of man, like we said in Numbers 15, not in our own eyes, not in our own ways, but we go in the ways of Yahweh. That's how this parsha ends, actually. This parsha ends with, you should do what is yashar in the eyes of Yahweh. We read in the Hebrew, it says, Ki ta'aseh hayashar be'enei Yahweh. And you shall do what is yashar, right, straight, just, upright in the eyes of Yahweh. That's what we're doing. How do we learn to do what is upright in the eyes of Yahweh? He told us. Learn to walk with him. Do love justice, love mercy, walk humbly. Show the heart of the Father. Yeshua said it this way: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbors yourself. All of this together. All right. This is how we are walking the kingdom here and now. All right. Guys, that's all I've got for you today, and I pray this has been a blessing to you. I pray this has challenged you and encouraged you. And if it has, please share this on whatever venue you're watching or listening, or whatever it is. Please share these, help get these teachings out there, and help spread the word so we can continue to do out there what we're supposed to be doing by putting the word out there. The more people hear it, the better, right? And if this is a blessing to you, share it, and also please consider giving a donation. If you can give a donation, it'll help us to keep these things out and going on the air however we need to do that. All right. So until next time, be blessed and be a blessing, and shalom.